Good morning, everyone. I am calling to order our standing committee of the Intergovernmental Relations Committee. My name is Elizabeth Glidden. I'm the chair of this committee, and I'm joined today by council members Quincy, Fry, Cano, and Andrew Johnson, and we are a quorum of the committee, able to do the city's business. We have two items on our agenda for today. The first is a series of action that relate to the president's executive action regarding executive order, regarding immigration that was just announced fairly recently. And we've actually been talking in several committees about how the city can support the president and the president's action, and our many residents within the city boundaries that we want to be able to take full advantage of the president's executive order. There are three actions that are before us. The first is considering a resolution supporting President Obama's executive actions on immigration. There is also an action to establish a city staff work group, which would be a multi-department work group to identify opportunities for the city to support implementation of the executive actions and to bring forward a proposal for official action and support. And this, I will say, I think relates to several things happening, but in particular, we just took action on the budget yesterday, and it does include an appropriation. So this would be then something that the work group would do would be to review a proposal to present to the council, whether it's this committee or another, might go through this committee and then go to Ways and Means, of course, about how that funding might be best utilized after work with some of our partners. And finally, on this action, we would amend our federal agenda to include language that indicates our support of the president's executive actions. And I want to allow Mr. Ranieri to maybe give us any additional comment that he might have, because I know he has been working with others already, including the mayor's office, including staff from neighborhood and community relations, to work with external partners in particular on how we can best partner. And then I think I will turn it over to Councilmember Cano, who really put together these actions so she can make the motion and comments that she might desire. So, Mr. Ranieri.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Good morning. My name is Gene Ranieri, the Director of Intergovernmental Relations. On November 20th, the President issued executive actions. We started meeting almost immediately with some of our partners, including the Immigration Law Center, many of the foundations. There's going to be some meetings in the next couple days regarding this issue with the philanthropy community, ourselves, and others to see how we can come up with a strategy that best serves the people who can best benefit from this. We will set up our work group immediately. We are also going to be working closely with Congressman Ellison and our state U.S. senators' offices are also interested in this issue. So the groundwork has been laid. We went through this before in 2012. The City Council in 2012 adopted a support resolution and items in the federal agenda supporting DACA, or the DREAM Act, as well as the deferred action for students. And this is a continuation of that and continuation of the city's policies to assist in this area. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ranieri. I'm not seeing questions, and so I think I might turn it over, if that's all right, to Councilmember Cano to actually make the motion, and I'm sure she has comments that she wants to make.
Sure, thank you. I would like to move this item forward, and just wanted to thank all my colleagues here on the council who have been working with me on this for a few months, actually, on this immigration issue. So as I mentioned last night, this is perhaps the most historic immigration policy change within the last few decades. And so out of the 11 million undocumented people in this nation, about 4 million of them will be able to gain some kind of benefit from this change. And that is very significant. That is going to change the lives of a lot of families, a lot of students, and have them focus more on education and less on deportation. And of course, course, contributing to our economy in other ways and stabilizing our neighborhoods. So this is a very significant action, and in Minneapolis, we will see the effects of it for years to come. We are going to see, I believe, a more empowered community because of this action. We will see folks who are investing in their neighborhood at an accelerated rate. We will see more participation, more civic participation. We will definitely see more connections and more investment in our neighborhoods because people are now able to live life more freely. And I think that's very important. So we thank President Obama for making this change. And the resolution that we have before us will list all the co-authors tomorrow. And many of us, if not all of us, are actually now listed as co-authors. Tomorrow we expect a big presentation to the community where they will come here at 9:30 a.m. before a council meeting and accept the resolution and talk about the importance of this change at the federal level. So in the resolution, we also acknowledge the need to continue to fight for a more permanent immigration reform. We know that a lot of these fixes are temporary. While significant, they're temporary. And so it's important to keep our eyes on the prize and to keep advocating for true and permanent immigration reform that will recognize the dignity and honor these community members in the way that they really should be honored. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Cano. And I'm not seeing any further comments. So with that, we'll call the vote on her motion. All in approval, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, and that item is approved. Thank you very, very much. Next, we have what is the continuation of our work on the state legislative agenda. This is maybe the, I don't know what you want to call it, most workshoppy of the sessions, but we want to be transparent with what are the proposed changes that will be in our state legislative agenda. We have one big document that we are kind of looking at what might be the changes to that document. And that will be one piece of what we will adopt, and we'll kind of take those final adoption actions the very first part of next year, which gives us time, as we've heard from our staff, to engage fully in the state legislative session, which is about to start. But this document that's before us, this is what you might call the full kit and caboodle. This is all of our policy positions. It is the full list, and this is what we kind of keep in our before the public, but also kind of in our back pocket. It is not necessarily the list of what we are most active on in one year, but allows us, if issues come up, to know that we have set positions on a wide variety of topics that are important to our residents, that are important to our city enterprise. And so that's the type of document that we're now seeing. What we usually do and what's happening this year is that we take the feedback from the actual new proposals that are made, and we have heard presentations on for the last was it 2 or 3 sessions of this committee. But then also we go back and make perhaps more technical corrections, amend based on what has happened in prior years, so that we are continuing to make sure this is an updated and fresh document. So with that, Ms. Lesh, why don't you take us through our documents and work for today?
Thank you, Madam Chair and council members. Good morning. Madam Chair, I think you outlined what the documents are you have in front of you and what our timeline is very well. What we're going to be doing today, the 2 primary documents that council members and posted online for the public you should have is one, this side-by-side document. The left-hand column shows the language in the city's existing 2014 legislative agenda, and then you'll see some strike-throughs and some some strike-throughs on the left-hand side, and then the result of those strike-throughs in the right-hand column that's noted the 2015 draft policy positions. And what we've really done with this document is go through and try to shorten up some of the language. We've stricken items that have been accomplished, that were accomplished in the 2014 session, but no real, I don't believe, substantive changes in terms of what the city's policy positions are on any given topic. So our plan today is to walk through this document And then the other document you have, and it also is online with the letters draft in large font here for everyone to see, is the result really of that right-hand column, that 2015 draft policy positions. What you see in this larger readable document then is that language in draft form. So that's an easy way for council members and for those following along with us to really see a clean version of what IGR and our partners in other city departments and council and mayor's office are proposing for our 2015 policy positions. And as the chair noted, this document is meant to act as sort of a library of sorts, detailing the city's position on a wide variety of issues. And then as we go into the 2015 session and then 2016 and 17, each of those legislative sessions are going to be unique in and of themselves. And so what IGR is suggesting is that we maintain this library of policies that very clearly says what the city believes on a multitude of fronts, but then we will also present a very short, tailored list that will be unique to each legislative session. So as we get closer to session, I know it seems close now, but there are still a lot of conversations happening. We will have a very tailored, finite list of what we really see as being the large items that we will be spending significant time on during the 2015 session. So we'll come back at that next meeting on January 8th, and we will have a final version of this based on the discussions today and over the next couple of weeks. And then we'll also have a final version of that very narrow, tailored document for the 2015 session. So it'll be very clear to the council and able for you to communicate to the public what the city really is going to be spending. We anticipate a significant amount of our time and resources on for the 2015 session. So, Madam Chair, with that, I think what we'll do is begin a brief walkthrough of this side-by-side document. And council members, if you have any questions as we go through as to why something might have been changed or removed, please don't hesitate to stop us. And then the other thing I would point out, Madam Chair, is that in this new document that will be the new city policy positions, we have also broken it down to correspond, if you see in the table of contents, with the city's goals. So if you look on page 1 internally, we have it broken down into funding and running a city that works, ensuring that the city is safe and livable, creating great natural and built places in Minneapolis, making Minneapolis a hub for economic activity and innovation, and fostering equity, One Minneapolis. And so that's another way that I think our residents can really see where we're putting some of our time and energy as we move forward on the legislative session. So with that, Madam Chair, I think we'll begin our walkthrough of the side-by-side, and I would turn it over to Ms. Bergman to begin with the public finance section.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Sasha Bergman from the IGR department, and actually, if it's okay with you, I'm hoping to walk through the status of the presentations that were given on November 6th and November 20th to this committee from the various departments, and let you know where those are in the document or where they've landed at this point. So, I guess first, if just looking at the draft policy positions document. The first item that pops up in there from the department presentations is the 10th Avenue Bridge bonding proposal from the Public Works Department. We did incorporate that language into the capital bonding section at the top of page 3 on that draft policy document. Next in the document is the voter assistance provisions from the city clerk's office. Those we did incorporate into the first bullet under the elections section on page 4, which is in the municipal governance section. We just incorporated the additional translation assistance coupled with a number of other things that were already listed in the agenda. The third item that comes up in the policy document that was presented in committee as a new policy position is the Rule of 3 change, which we incorporated also into the municipal governance section. It's on page 5. The third bullet from the top represents that additional position. And then the increased funding for HIV and STD prevention and control, which was something that the health department was presenting on November 6th, is incorporated into the city livability section on page 9 of the document under the closing the health equity gap, just the third bullet from the bottom there. Next, the Public Works proposal for product stewardship approach to collection recycling of mattresses and carpet was incorporated into our existing policy on extended producer responsibility. We already had some language in the agenda or in the previous legislative agenda on that, and so we incorporated that into the first bullet on page 10. The Upper Harbor Terminal redevelopment tax increment financing special law proposal is incorporated into the redevelopment and economic development section on page 11 of the policy document, sort of in the middle of the pack where it refers to the special legislation. And then, of course, the 4 proposals from the mayor's office, and one of which was also supported by the health department for the mayor's, from the mayor's cradle to K cabinet. There were 4 proposals that are incorporated into the early childhood education section on page 12 under the eliminating racial and gender disparities section of the agenda. And so those are the proposals that are incorporated into this policy positions document at this time. And we do have 2 proposals that were presented in committee, the Public Works proposal for the session law amendment for legacy districts, and then the city attorney's proposal on expanding prohibitions on a driver while using a wireless communication device to prohibit playing video games on your phone while you're driving. These are not in the policy positions document at this time. The committee presentations and discussions revealed that there's, some uncertainty and remaining questions about those proposals that we would like to see further discussion and consideration of at this time. And I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bergman. I just want to note for my colleagues that Ms. Bergman has put together, it's helpful to hear you kind of verbally go through this, but she's actually put together a summary of the proposals that were presented to us so we can kind of see in one document where did they land, and I am forwarding that via email right now. Again, we're not taking action at this committee, so if there are further questions, I think there will be an opportunity to address them. I'm going to make just maybe a comment on the second item that you brought up, which was this proposal identified by the city attorney's office regarding what I think is really outdated legislation about texting while driving. And we had a pretty good conversation here, but I think some of the things that get revealed in that conversation are who is the best lead and what needs to be the work done to ensure that this gets the best chance of success. So again, it wasn't that this was an idea that is unnecessary. I think it certainly sounds like it's true that this law needs to be updated. However, is the city of Minneapolis the proper lead, knowing that there is no other organizational body, and this would be traditionally an item that is brought forward probably by either someone within the criminal justice system or around the transportation system, one of those organizational bodies that that then we could support and lend our voices to as this legislation would wind through the system. So I think that's a good example of something, again, it's not that something doesn't have merit at its core as to why it's on the list or not. It has a little bit more to do with what's the readiness of that item as we continue to make sure it has the best chance of success when we do put it on the list. So thank you for that. I've seen other comments.
Great. And Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, I will turn it over to Ms. Lesh to walk through some of the new provisions that are in the section that starts on page 12, Fostering Equity, 1 Minneapolis, regarding eliminating racial and gender disparities. There was some work, and Ms. Lesh can talk about this, done internally at the city level, and there's sort of new proposals that are included in the policy positions that we want to make sure that we walk through for the committee. So.
Madam Chair and council members, I think the most significant amount of change that you would see from the 2014 to 2015 policy positions is the section that starts on page 12 and is continued on to page 13, which is under the city goal of fostering equity, 1 Minneapolis, with the title of Eliminating Racial and Gender Disparities. And what we did as an IGR team was convene a work group within the city. This was separate from the broader policy liaison group conversation that we had, the group that vetted all of the proposals that you heard here. But what we did was convene a work group of primarily department heads and some division heads from CPED, Human Rights, Civil Rights, the City Coordinator's Office, staff from the Mayor's Office, and from City Council. And we really want to thank all of them for their time and input and their expertise. It really was their work as practitioners in their individual fields that touch on racial and gender disparity work and some initiatives that they have instituted within their own departments that they think could be successful in a broader way for the state, and some barriers that they have identified in their work to closing racial and gender disparity gaps within the city that they see as state law changes that would be needed, or at least state administrative policy changes that would be needed to help them in their work to close those gaps in the city and throughout the state. And so that's the list that you see here on pages 12, continuing on to 13. There's a lot of new policy here, but there also are some existing items that were already in the city's legislative agenda that very clearly fit within this framework of fostering equity, One Minneapolis. And so we have moved them from other sections and incorporated them here. And I believe that is noted in some places in the side-by-side that we'll walk through later. So beginning on page 12, the first section you see in early childhood education, this is the Cradle to K agenda that came out of the Mayor's Cradle to K cabinet that was presented by the Mayor's staff before you. You see that included here. The next section is the Health Department's pieces, and both of these items here regarding the conducting of infant mortality reviews and policies to help foster healthy homes. These were policies that were already in the city's legislative agenda, and they very clearly have an equity impact, and so we've incorporated them here. We do anticipate seeing significant legislative action on both of these items in the 2015 session, and we expect that the city will be probably the lead on the infant mortality piece, and then working with a very broad coalition on lots of different parts of the Healthy Homes agenda, asthma, lead exposure, things of that nature. The next two pieces are also...
You know, I'm going to hold you right there because Councilmember Cano has a question. I don't want us to get too far along. So, Councilmember Cano.
Sure. Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I just commend the city staff. I used to lobby on one issue, which was the DREAM Act, and that was really hard. And when I see the breadth of work that you all take on, I'm just amazed. So I'm like, wow, how did they keep all this together? But I do have one sort of connected question to this, and I've been seeing, you know, the name and the title of the, what is it called, the committee to close opportunities at the state, and I think Senator Jeff Hayden is a part of it or a convener.
The Senate committee?
Senate Special Committee on Disparities and Opportunities, and it is a bipartisan kind of special body, and I think right now I would say we don't know what will be sort of the path for that committee itself, but I think the issues that it raised certainly will continue to be kind of a very full part of the discussion at the Senate and the House moving forward. So I don't know, Ms. Lesh.
Madam Chair, I think you described it perfectly. We think that committee really set the conversation in motion, I think, at the legislative level, and they began by hearing some fantastic presentations that are probably available online. We could find those for you from different state agencies for them to come and present their area of work, working on closing racial and gender equity gaps, and they haven't met for the last couple of months. So we're really not sure, you know, what their meeting schedule might look like going forward, but they absolutely were a catalyst, I think, in a lot of awareness that there's a lot of legislative work that can be done, and there are some state regulations and things of that nature. There's some things the state can do that would make it easier for local units of government to make strides in this area as well. So regardless of what that specific committee starts to do, I think they really have been this fantastic catalyst for a lot of discussion in this area, and we do expect to see movement regardless of what that specific select committee decides to do with their time and work.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to make sure we got a chance to briefly talk about it because I think for the rest of our council colleagues, it would be a point of interest. And I know that I've been trying to go and attend those meetings when they happen. Sometimes the timing's just difficult for me to figure out, but I know that Council Vice President has been there and the mayor has been there as well. So I think if sometime, you know, what some of our other committee members can attend, I think it would be a fruitful discussion to also advance, as you mentioned, the racial equity agenda that the city of Minneapolis is doing with other partners.
Thank you very much. Continuing on, I'm just in the middle of page 12 in the housing section. These two items also were already included in our legislative agenda, having to do with finding housing and support for those exiting the criminal justice system, and the repeal of the $50 offset for households living in public or rent subsidized housing. The next item, building wealth. This was also an item that was included in our 2014 legislative agenda, looking at policies that reduce access to providing access to background information for employers and things like that, criminal background checks and credit reports for employers. And the city has done terrific work in that area. Council Member Glidden has been to the Capitol to testify about the city's success in our Ban the Box program and supported statewide expansion of that. So similar policies there. Workforce development. The first item I would point to is an existing item. We did tighten up the language there a little bit, looking at workforce goals as they pertain to franchise agreements. And we just kind of clarified that the point of that was that contractors who are working for companies that are subject to franchise agreements and those companies that are subject to those franchise agreements should have workforce goals in place. And that was the intent of the last statement. It just wasn't particularly clear.
Yeah, and I would just make sure that it gets clarified that it's workforce and business inclusion goals. It's actually probably, in the end, would be more about business inclusion, but we can talk about that. I just want to make sure it's clear.
Thank you. That's helpful, Madam Chair. Thank you. The next couple of items in the workforce development section are new, so I do want to highlight those. The creation of a statewide portal for internship opportunities for youth. This is something that the Governor's Workforce Development Council has discussed as well, and we think that this would be a really fantastic and probably simple way, some technology needed, of course, way to increase access to internships and after-work activities and things of that nature for young people, both in Minneapolis and around the state, rather than having to hop from place to place searching for internship opportunities, that there should be really a one-stop shop for young people who are looking for these opportunities. The second point there, review and expansion of the state's apprenticeship certification process to allow for increased inclusion of new positions. The state apprenticeship certification process tends to focus on traditional employment, labor, things of that nature, which are, of course, incredibly valuable and need to be continued. What we're suggesting is that that process just be examined and that there are other positions that should be included in apprenticeship certification processes and programs, IT, and some new things that are not solely labor-focused. Moving on to the final section there at the bottom of page 12, employment access. That first point is also an existing item that was in our 2014 legislative agenda, looking at employment and contracting guidance for state capital projects, some of those employment goals as well, that those should be included in capital projects. And the second point there, supporting government employment pathways that provide multiple points of entry for workers of various ages and experiences to access public employment. This is a new item that came out of discussion of our work group of city staff, that there really does need to be an examination of the entire continuum of public employment opportunities, whether that is beginning as a step-up intern or an urban scholar, or whether that is in labor, or whether that's in administrative work or something of that nature, that there are multiple points of access to public employment, and that there should be lots of points of entry for people who are attempting to enter public employment as a career path, both here in the city, the county level, and throughout the state. And then, Madam Chair, if there are no further questions on there, I'll move on to page 13. And I think almost all of the items on page 13 are new items. And we think there's a lot of work to be done in the area of certification, procurement, and business development. So beginning at the top with the certification, I think it's important to kind of frame this piece for you. If council members aren't aware, there are many, many types of certifications for certifying a business as minority or women-owned business. And just 3 of them are CERT, C-E-R-T, which is a certification program that is used by the city of St. Paul, Hennepin County, and Ramsey County. As council members know, here in Minneapolis, we have DBE, the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program. We use that, MnDOT uses that, as well does the MAC and the Met Council. And then TGB, for example, is the Targeted Group Business Program, and that's used by the Minnesota State Department of Administration. So given all of these different certifications, it's a very bumpy landscape, and there are a whole host of ways to become certified. Then that also becomes a very challenging process on the back end if you are, say, a city or a contractor and you would like to hire one of these different certified businesses and contract with them. It's very difficult to identify them. It's very difficult to identify what the certification process was that they went through to receive that particular type of certification. And so we have some recommendations for improving and streamlining that process. So I will read through these because these are new. In the certification section, support for organizations and programs that provide technical assistance for minority-owned businesses and those who work with minority-owned businesses to become certified minority vendors for the purpose of increasing markets for their products to government and other purchasers. What we learned through our discussion with our work group is that there are businesses who would like to become certified and don't know how, and there are nonprofits who would like to certify them, but maybe don't know how. And so we want to increase technical support for kind of a train-the-trainer model so that some of our partners in the community would be better equipped to help some of our businesses become certified and then be then a specific vendor to different public purchasers like the city, like the state. The second bullet point here, increased consistency and simplicity in the certification standards and processes, such as the development of a single certification or unified certification portal. We know that discussions along this line are happening at the state level. There is statewide recognition that this checkerboard approach to certification is challenging for everyone. Clear identification of certified businesses in cooperative agreements. And then finally, policies that increase the number of certified minority-owned business owners. Pertaining to the cooperative agreements, again, that's one of these pieces where it's not necessarily noted and it's difficult to identify if a particular business is a certified business. So an entity might be doing business with a certified business and within a cooperative agreement and not know that because it's not specifically identified. So it's another piece. The next section then moves into procurement, which is the support then of those certified minority-owned businesses. If you're going to be certified, you need someone to actually then buy your products. Clear goal setting for purchasing from minority-owned businesses for the state and other units of government. Development and investment in clear strategies by the state and other government entities to promote themselves as purchasers of the supplies and services provided by the minority-owned businesses. A lot of the time businesses don't think to actually sell to us and that we have large purchasing power and would like to be purchasing from these certified businesses. State investment in minority-owned businesses and a regular reporting mechanism of these investments throughout the state. That reporting piece came up repeatedly. Statewide monitoring and regular reporting of the funds spent by the state and other units of government for procurement from minority-owned businesses. Where are the dollars going? Are they being distributed around the state? Things of that nature. The last section then in this piece of business development, investments in outreach initiatives to promote entrepreneurship and business development to increase the number of minority-owned businesses. And then investment in organizations and programs that provide financial and business development resources for minority-owned businesses to assist them in building capacity and improving management systems. That was a topic that came up repeatedly in our discussions, was it's one thing to start a business, it's another to sustain that business, and that the businesses that we're talking about really need ongoing technical support. And then finally, state review of unnecessary barriers to minority-owned businesses and entrepreneurs. And then finally, Madam Chair, the last section here is in capital investment. This was an existing item of conducting racial equity impact assessments for large capital investments to examine how different communities may be affected by proposed projects to ensure equitable development throughout the state.
Did you have another question? Okay. All right, I think we don't have questions, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And with that, if we have time, I will turn it over to, I think, Ms. Bergman. We would start with the public finance section and then very quickly walk through the side-by-side so you know what you're looking at for the next couple of weeks. And then with that, I think, Madam Chair, that will be all for us today.
Thank you very, very much. Ms. Berkman.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. So again, we're going to be looking at this side-by-side document. It's quite a long document. I think it's 31 pages. And so we'll try to walk through this in a, not go through absolutely every detail, and we're more than happy to answer any questions that you may have as you look through this over the next couple of weeks of why certain, items were worded a certain way or why they were removed or anything like that. So we're happy to answer questions. Starting on page 1 of the side-by-side document with the public finance section, or the previously called public finance section is now the local government finance section. And this section in the previous agenda was very long and had a lot of narrative, a lot of details about the contributions that the city makes to the state of Minnesota through sales tax revenues that are generated here, or commercial industrial property tax. And those are all definitely important points to make and important facts to have at the ready. But in the interest of making sure that the policy positions document is more concise, we did eliminate a significant amount of the language, as you can see in the left-hand column, and sort of paraphrased it and shortened it into the right-hand column on pages 1 and 2 of the side-by-side. And then in terms of the Minneapolis priorities in the 2014 legislative agenda, all of those items are retained in the new document. We just maybe reworded some of them or updated them if necessary, but none of those policy positions went away. For example, supporting direct property tax relief to homeowners and renters, or supporting funding for local government aid. The one thing that we did change is, you can see on page 3, we did add the pension section from, previously it was a pension section in the 2014 legislative agenda, and we moved that whole bullet in its entirety to the public finance section, just to kind of keep that together. They're interrelated, and also to just eliminate the pension section that stood on its own. Other than that, I think the whole section is pretty much the same. It's just maybe shortened or rephrased. And if there are no questions, I'm happy to turn it over to Ms. Lesh to talk about the capital bonding section.
Madam Chair and council members, continuing on to the capital bonding section, and I am on the bottom of page 3 of the side-by-side. Thanks to a lot of the work of the council members that we have here today and others, and the mayor's office and the mayor herself, we are happy to cross Nicollet Mall rebuild for $25 million off of our list. We're very excited to have that project moving forward, and thank the legislature for their support, and our partners at the Downtown Council for their support in the passage of that legislation. And then, Madam Chair, the remainder of the bonding section is the same. We are working with city departments to look at what our new list might be, and so we will be coming back to you at a later date with additional projects that will need to be amended into the bonding list. Continuing on to the bottom of page 4 is where we begin the transportation section. And also, Madam Chair, transportation, as we all know, is going to be a major topic of discussion in the 2015 legislative session. We are still in the process of having internal discussions here at the city and conversations with our partners in other units of government and things of that nature around transportation. And we don't have any changes at the moment for our current agenda. We have some cleanup language that you see before you, but nothing that we would recommend deleting at this time. We do anticipate coming back to you with some changes for this section, and then some very honed-in language for our specific 2015 legislative agenda, as well as it pertains to transportation. So we'll be coming back to you with more pieces in there. So with that, Madam Chair, I would turn it over to Mr. Ranieri to talk about the municipal governance section.
Madam Chair, the municipal governance section has many subsections to it. And in the general government or municipal governance, there are some changes. We're suggesting really shortening the language when it came to abandoned vehicles and making a shorter statement. We're also suggesting that legislation that was proposed a couple of years ago to amend the Municipal Planning Act, we maybe should not take the lead on that, and we would work closely with the League of Cities on that issue. In terms of other language that's deleted on the general government, legislation that would authorize state regulation of dog and cat breeders, I think that was accomplished. I think Ms. Lesh had something to do with that, with the enthusiastic Another, on page 8, the issue about SAC. For years, we always supported growth for growth. The more we work with our friends at the Met Council, we discovered that growth is being defined, we thought it was defined to mean expansion of the system, putting in new pipes, new capacity. They're suggesting that growth may mean more than that. It may mean also increasing your use of the system, even though you don't need additional capacity. So we have added some language that's a little different, talking about be based on need, be based on those paying into the system. Ms. Olson will be available to answer more questions on that, but this is a change and a suggested change based on our discussions with the Met Council. In the election section, we talked about translation services, and we're going to do some research because on my understanding and talking to some folks from the city clerk's office years ago, there was some of our ballots were printed in Scandinavian languages, something that helped us historically. Also, under staffing and human resources, on the bottom of page 9, special legislation, that would be trying to change our system. I think we commonly call it the Rule of 3. And then the driver's license is the same. That's an issue that I know we worked heavily on in 13 and 14, and we'll again do in 15. We also moved some of the utility language and some of the language we use to help work with the clean energy issues over to the environment issue. But we are suggesting, and we need your guidance on this, maybe deleting the support for the municipalization language, and also wondering if we may need the language we had in the past dealing with allowing certain things to be put in a franchise agreement, because now we've done it differently. So those two issues we need to do further discussion on. All the other language that's deleted was either accomplished or is no longer necessary because it's either been accomplished or withdrawn by people we were supporting. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ranieri. I am not seeing questions. Yeah. So I think we're ready for what will bring us to conclusion here. Or I guess I'm not sure where you're at in the presentation. So,
Madam Chair, we're to public safety, housing, city livability.
okay. And is this the last section?
We have probably. We can go real quick. We probably have about 5 sections, 6 sections.
I think we need to go more quickly
Sure.
to get us through this. I don't. So we have another committee that starts at 10.
Sure.
And so I think, why don't you hit the high points?
You got it. Madam Chair, we will, just whipping through really quick, on the bottom of page 11, we deleted the item having to do with lost and stolen cell phones because that was accomplished in 2014, thanks to Mr. Ranieri and some of his partners. Some cleanup language on page 12, some combining of some items. We're going to be changing some of the language as it pertains to sex trafficking. We're going to be updating that to reflect current language and terminology. We've cleaned up some of the language around firearms because we had some redundancy. We had some items in the domestic abuse section that were also in the gun section, so we've just kind of combined those. We've deleted the item in the fire safety section about mandated sprinklers in facilities. There's not complete agreement on that item, and it was debated heavily last year, so we would like to hold that for further discussion. A lot of shortening then in the opposition to policies that compromise public safety. We have just shortened that up a little bit and eliminated items that aren't really in the purview of the city. And then, let's see, moving on to affordable housing. Let's see. Actually, I might kick affordable housing to Sasha. I'm sorry. Go quickly.
Right.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the affordable housing section, there really aren't any policy changes suggested. A couple of the statements were moved into the later section on equity. On the city livability, I just want to point out on page 18, under general city livability, we did suggest an added statement, support policies and tools to prevent, reduce, or mitigate noise and health impacts to airport adjacent communities. We didn't have a statement on this previously. And then otherwise, the rest of the city livability section is generally the same with the addition of the health department proposal on HIV STD funding. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Ranieri.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Environment and Energy, there are not very many changes, but we see the first one on page 22 is inserting mattresses as part of product stewardship. There is some redrafting of the whole issue dealing with SCORE. We had a very long paragraph. We tried to break it out, and so there's no really new policy changes there. One of the things we did do, suggest one thing we don't have is support legislation dealing with drinking water. So we suggest offer that as a new item. And also, we just did some reordering and really trying to shorten up paragraphs and making them a little bit more easy to read. Other issues, we also worked in other issues here dealing with wastewater and trees. Again, nothing new. And then also for pollinators, we just tighten up the language and suggest the continuation of our policy dealing with pesticide bans.
And finally, Madam Chair, I will just say that a lot of the language in the workforce section, which I believe is the last section that we're on right now, just shortening up some paragraphs, and then a lot of that was then moved into our new racial equity and disparities reduction section. So with that, Madam Chair, I think we've covered everything for today, and we will be available for questions from the panel going forward, and we'll be back on January 8th for a final vote. And so please let us know if anyone has any questions in the meantime, but thank you very much, Madam Chair and Committee.
All right, thank you very much. And with that, I'm not seeing any further questions. We will receive and file, so I'll move that. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, and that is accepted. And with that, we have concluded with our business for today, and we are adjourned. Thank you.